One of the ways we become better as a community is by taking moments to acknowledge the good work our friends and colleagues do. Today is a day where we want to give thanks to our classroom teachers, administrators, facilities, security, and business staff. I ask you to remember that we're all here in this experience together at WMA, in this small corner of the Pioneer Valley, carrying ourselves into a third century as a school. And ultimately, schools on the outside are made of bricks and mortar, but the memories we all take with us have little to do with the space, and most to do with the people we share those spaces with. So during this holiday season, let us take some moments to celebrate these people and offer our gratitude for their years of service to the school. So what I will do is, in 5-year increments, acknowledge members of our faculty and staff for the work they've done here. So if you are being called today, I will call your name, say a few words about you, and then call you to come up. Mr. Easler will assist me. So, celebrating 5 years of service, Mr. Wilbraham. Mr. Brown works in our admissions department. He is friendly, gentle, an exemplary coach and father. And the phrase I hear from him most often, that resonates with me, is when he uses the term, "my girls." It demonstrates a sense of care and commitment to his players, in line with that he shows his daughter. It's a little weird when he uses it with Mr. Privet and Mannix, but the sense of care is still the same. He shows grace and a sense of caring and his ability to welcome new people to our school, and we are fortunate to have him here. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
His head's out of the screen.
Ms. Kristen Casey. She is a creative force in the classroom, from managing sensitive conversations around the typewriter to hosting a 1920s Gatsby cocktail party. Ms. Casey aims high in her pursuit of intellectualism. And with recent elective classes especially, she works to ensure that women's literary voices are heard by our community. A middle school, high school, English and ESL teacher, track coach, and director of the middle school play, she has also recently added high school actor to her resume. Her versatility is an asset at a small school like ours. Ms. Casey, thank you for 5 years of service. Ms. Julie Chan. Ms. Chan, formerly admissions and now in the Dean's office. She connects exceedingly well with students and serves as the unofficial advisor to about 30 of you who seem to make your home there. She has a sign that a student gave her that hangs to her right behind her shoulder. It states, "Mrs. Chan is on duty, so don't worry." With you here, Julie, we do not. Thank you for 5 years of service. A member of our maintenance department, Mr. Chuck Hannington. Chuck is a licensed construction supervisor, craftsman, and can build anything. He's sincere, to the point, honest, and hardworking. Roofing, carpentry, homes, remodels, his hands are incredibly skilled. My hands hold dry erase markers. I am in awe of him not only for what he does, but how he does it with a smile and traditionally a luscious mane of silver hair that is something out of a Hollywood magazine. Last summer, he was up on a roof. The wind hit his hair in a certain direction. There was a glisten of sweat off his brow. And I needed a moment to sort of catch my breath. Yeah, we have someone of that caliber working here. Known as the Silver Fox among his colleagues, he's a proud father and grandfather and a valued asset at WMA. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Ms. McLaughlin, our science department, smart and invested teacher, coach, and dorm parent, promoting and living our STEM initiatives as a model, especially for our younger female students interested in STEM fields. Her coordination of the spring data blitz highlights the hard work you do, ensuring scientific research and presentation are cornerstones of their student experience. I also appreciate her subtle, yet wonderfully wry sense of humor and never giving up on her dreams of being an 18th century tattoo artist and competing on the professional parkour circuit. For her intellect, diligence, and commitment to the Academy, we thank you, Liz. Next, a member of our security department, Mr. Jamal Makia. And I'm not sure Jamal is with us today, but let me just take a moment. First off, if you know Mr. Makia, absolutely no one calls him the Silver Fox at all. He keeps us safe, but also encouraged. Personally, I appreciate his company as we collectively cheer for our children who both run on the cross-country team by saying weird cross-country cheers like, keep running, or go faster, yay. As a co-cheerleader and as a security guard, Mr. Makia, your efforts here are greatly appreciated. So please, when you see Mr. Makia, thank you. Mr. Gary Marshall is a member of our business office. What did those people do? What's going on in that hallway? I imagine just a bunch of grumpy men in visors punching numbers into adding machines, someone with an abacus. Ultimately, they are responsible for ensuring our finances are clear, balanced, and accounted for. Mr. Marshall also has the unenviable task of tracking down the money we spend at school. Sure, sometimes he cries a bit too much regarding the important stuff I've had to buy. Wally, well, I just spent $400 on job lot on a hot tub. And then, you can't write top secret on a Chick-fil-A receipt and expect to get reimbursed. Regardless, Gary, your persistence and ability to help our school be responsible stewards of our finances is greatly appreciated. And for 5 years, thank you, Mr. Martin. Ms. Janet Moran, our school archivist. Ms. Moran is the alumni mother of Trevor, Molly, and Emily. The Moran family are truly vested here at the Academy. She ensures our history remains preserved and living, reminding us that we are all a part of this moving institution and that our time here is brief and to make the most of it. Also, she is the unofficial aestheticist, committed to showing our visitors a dignified and historic school. We appreciate her work, and we thank her for 5 years. Mr. Todd Renier. Mr. Renier is an intelligent man. Michael Jura's uncle, who taught the Ludlow school system, had taught as a student and told Mr. Jura, quote, in his 45 years at Ludlow High School, that was one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. It's also Ludlow, so take it with a grain of salt. It's not Milton Town. But Todd is also surprisingly funny. I have this one anecdote I shared the other day. I was in class watching Todd teach, and he was up for a joke, and he said, "Hey, what's a pirate's favorite letter?" And I just cringed, thinking, oh man, this is not going to go well. The kids are going to eat him up on this one. And so he says, "What's a pirate's favorite letter?" And everybody thinks, "R." And he says, "No, it's the 1527 letter from Sir Queen Elizabeth given to Sir Francis Drake, so he would have total immunity whenever he pirated the ship." And then now back to fractions. It was seamless, it was brilliant, and unexpected, so God, thank you for your quirky sense of humor. Ms. Ryan, Director of our Marketing Communications Department. She is kind, gracious, and helps set the direction for how we present ourselves to the world in terms of message and image. I personally appreciate your friendliness, your gracious ability to accept feedback because everyone has an opinion about marketing stuff. She sits there and accepts them all with grace. She is a wonderful ambassador of the school, whose work with the magazine and our brand helps those who don't yet know us and reconnects with alums and friends who have not been at this place for some time. She also has the coolest named kid of all the employees, little Jack Ryan. Ms. Ryan, I appreciate your ability to share who we are with the world and appreciate your commitment to the school. For 5 years of service, thank you, Ms. Ryan. And if she could just linger for a moment. Today is also her birthday, along with Miss Douglas' birthday, and in 2 days, Mr. Mannix's birthday. So, Miss Ryan, Miss Douglas, and Mannix, we have about 500 voices here. Could we collectively let us sing? One, Mannix, Mannix. I'd like to also acknowledge the service of a member of our maintenance department, Michael Santinello. Mike has a background as a plumber, so whether it is in fixing a leaky pipe, doing campus deliveries, he is busy, moving, hardworking, and willing to do what is needed to get the job done. He loves spending time with his granddaughter Zoe, taking care of his family. Head of facilities, Mr. Chris Reed, says that we are lucky to have him. He is also the only employee ever in our annual faculty versus maintenance basketball game to ever dunk on Mr. Brown. It was awesome. Mike, I thank you for your hard work and versatility and willingness to do what is needed to get the job done. Thank you. Mr. Nate White. Mr. White, with Mr. White, the spirit of the camp counselor is alive and well. And if I'm ever in a life or death situation and need someone to both simultaneously play Super Smash Brothers and row a canoe, he is my go-to guy. Charismatic, engaging math teacher, dorm parent, and coach, he displays a willingness to be himself, share his interests with students, and is unafraid to be silly. As a math teacher, thorough in his in-depth explanations of complex material, he displays intellect and quick wit. Recently performing on stage with students, Nate also showed some great acting chops and a willingness to help out when needed. Admittedly, modern listening audiences may not be ready for his singing, It was described in the last edition of Atlas as, quote, like hearing sea lions mating with farming equipment. Still, it does not prevent him from sharing it with us. Above all, Nate's great talent is that he is unafraid to share who he is. And that sincerity and that authenticity is highly respected. So, Mr. White, thank you for fighting. We're making a jump now to 10 years of service. First up, Mr. Mike Mannix. Now, has anyone ever seen the movie Big? Where that happy kid jumps into the body of a happy adult? It's not this movie. This is a new movie I'm trying to pitch where a grumpy 82-year-old is flown into the body of a 4-year-old. I have no backers as of yet, but if anybody is interested, I think we have a winner on our hands. Mike is a dedicated, demanding coach, hardworking, committed to residential life, and quite frankly, deals with stuff that is sometimes just no fun. Roommate conflicts, sit-down lunch, transportation shuttle issues, and he does this all fueled almost entirely by Diet Coke and Big White Pizza. Now, behind the gruff exterior, I know is a deeply caring man. It might not seem it the way he screams for a courtside foul that the referee apparently never saw, but it's true. We see it with his children, his students, and his colleagues. And when you walk into his office, his basketball plays are written on the whiteboard behind his head. They show a series of plays with X's and O's. I see through that, Mike. I know what's really there. It's love. Behind that rough exterior, we all know that those X's and O's are not symbols for offense and defense. They're just hugs and kisses. So, look at Mr. Mannix. Where are you? There he is. Gentleman dressed like the Undertaker over there. Let's clap for him for 10 years of service, please. And what happened then? Well, in Wilbraham, they say, that Mannix's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. All right, we're jumping to 15 years. Stretch out. I appreciate everybody's patience. 15 years. First year is Mr. Paul Bloomfield. Mr. Bloomfield is a photographer, painter, artist, and advocate, and my neighbor for 1 year, and then he chose to move away. Father of Jackson and Zoe, husband to Sherry, always with his charming Western Massachusetts accent. His advocacy for art and music at this school is crucial. An artist creates, provokes, makes a social commentary others are often not brave enough to make. His students appreciate his diligence, his hard work, and his integrity with his own art. He asks students to create and interpret visual images. He also understands how to use those images to communicate important themes of what more of us should be caring about. I've seen Paul share his considerable talents as an artist and communicator with students in the classroom, the darkroom, and even overseas. We traveled together to India, up to the foothills of the Himalayas, and stood and listened to the Dalai Lama together. Miss Mahoney was a student of ours at that time. We also rocked out together in New Orleans to some great blues music. Paul is supportive, creative, thoughtful, and above all, and I learned this in New Orleans and at his 50th birthday party, he is a wonderful dancer. Almost majestic in his movements, graceful, like Tai Chi. If you did Tai Chi after drinking 6 Red Bulls and sticking your finger in an electric socket. Paul, you are a champion of the arts here. You practice what you preach, and your students, and you help our students advance to their next level as artists. And for 15 years, our students have been richer for your efforts. Thank you. Mr. Michael Jura. Mr. Jura has taught more different classes here than anyone else, arguably in the history of the Academy. Human Geography, Global Studies 2, Social Media, ARC, AP Seminar, English electives, pole vaulting with Hemingway, Hegelian dialectics on Tatooine, beards and books, a retrospective look at the role of facial hair in early 20th century novel. Not all successful. But for Michael, Michael's an important person for me. Mr. Jura. I'll take a moment here, Michael. Mr. Jura lived across from me, like Bloomfields, and also moved away. There's a theme here. Yet for well over a decade, our families have been closely connected. As our children were in and out of each other's homes, he's a friend, colleague, and committed traveler. Yet Michael's greatest gift as an educator is not his intellect or his versatility, which are both valued here. His greatest talent is as a listener. He listens to students many of us as teachers sometimes cannot completely hear. For this reason, he has sought out for continual guidance and wisdom. Whenever I see alumni, they always ask me how Mr. Jura is doing. My answer is always the same, no matter if they graduated 15 years ago or last spring. I say, Michael's the same. He's helping students find their voice, he's helping our school move forward, and he's having another kid. Michael, I thank you for 15 years of service to the school, but more so 15 years of friendship. Next person, Tim Harrington. So Harrington began here in the 70s as a student. 1970s, just to clarify. Alum and father of 3 daughters who graduated from here, Nora, Meg, and Clara. His connection to the school as an alum, a parent of 3, and a teacher is as strong as it gets. He bleeds red and blue, which we all do depending on oxygenated blood, but his red blood is a little bit redder and a little bit bluer than all of ours. Tim is deliberative, thoughtful, and exceedingly bright. He is a Renaissance man. He knows a lot about a lot of stuff. Might not know where his keys and glasses are right now, but that doesn't matter. He is an intelligent, thoughtful, supportive man of letters. He believes strongly that how you communicate is a reflection of who you are as a person. Writing is important. For this reason, he spends hours with you, helping you craft sentences to share what it is you feel is important to say. He also spends countless hours writing letters for you, seniors. You make sure you clap hard for this guy. He has written a ton of your college recs. Remember to thank him graciously. I teach right after him in the same room, so I see him working with your papers, pushing concepts in the novels you read. And I'm there watching, not because I came to watch it, but because he's still teaching 5 minutes into my class and has no concept of time whatsoever. Mr. Harrington and I grew up in the same town of Duxbury, Massachusetts. We both played rugby at Middlebury College, but a long time apart. And when he first came to WMA, our first conversation was what we needed to do to get rugby going. And then more than 10 years later, he's still at it. As a coach, I will admit, he knows more about rugby than I ever will. I'm basically there as I can be. This sport that we share and the culture which surrounds us is important for him to impart to new players. We are lucky to have Mr. Harrington. I appreciate his patience with me, the passion he brings to writing and rugby, and the love he has for his school. Thank you, Tim. Mr. Walter Kitchko. Mr. Kitchko is a member of our IT department and is, as Mr. Giesler states, the personification of problem solving. Mr. Kitchko works in IT, helping with network issues and individual crises. He also helps with security and video. So for those of you who have skipped this meeting, not to worry, he has cameras in the hall that have already identified you. Walter solves outages, email issues, phone updates, chapel and meeting emergencies, doing the unglamorous answering of an array of IT questions, like when students ask why the wireless went down for 30 seconds, or when another student asks how they can use a LAN network to circumvent an IP protocol, or when Mr. Cook asks what email is. He handles all those queries graciously, and for 15 years plus of problem-solving service, we thank you, Mr. Kitchko. Mr. Jody Santos. Mr. Santos is a part-time employee in our maintenance department, yet he is always there, ready to be called upon should we need an extra hand. I especially appreciate his patience. Many of us with children here on campus have a host of big plastic stuff that crowds our yards. And we all do our best to pick it up before he starts mowing, but inevitably we miss some. And he's on one of those big mowers. Yet, rather than mowing all those small little pieces of plastic up, he gets off his mower, he gently moves each small toy aside. Now, that's a small gesture from a part-time employee. But for 15 years, these collections of small gestures measure up to a great amount of care, and they continue to be greatly appreciated. So for Mr. Santos, thank you for 15 years. Ms. Caroline Smith. Ms. Smith works as the executive assistant to our head of school and former head of school. She is West Springfield's finest. Ms. Smith, mother to daughters Jessie and Jackie, is professional, thorough, and exceedingly detailed. She served as the executive assistant to the former head, Mr. Rodney Lebrecht, now serves under Mr. Easler. She ensures Mr. Easler's schedule and events run seamlessly. She is detail-oriented, considerate, and friendly. And as we're close and reach hall, she just yells at me from across the lobby, "Wally, wake up! Mr. Easler's coming!" Or, "You look exceedingly handsome today!" And, stuff like that. For me, what I remember, she is the head person putting together our school's major ceremonies. Matriculation, convocation, graduation. These events are important traditions and symbols for the academy. When in the midst of coordinating a large event like this, she is surrounded by a million details regarding sound equipment, chair rentals, linens, lighting, and all of that seems somewhat thankless. But those details, when done well, as she does collectively, they create an environment, a motif, and ultimately a feeling and a memory which stay with people well after they are gone. And that is important. For 15 years of creating memories for our students to take with them, we thank you, Ms. Smith. Stand up for me. Thank you. Take a stretch. I appreciate everybody. We're almost there. We're coming up to big dogs, too.
Jamal is here.
Okay, thank you. Now, we're celebrating, as we move forward, 20 years of service for this next individual, 2 decades. This is Lucy Zamba, member of our nurse department. Lucy is a caring nurse that really wants to see all of our students be successful. She is committed to WMA and cherishes the attachments that are created along the way. Her friend and colleague, Ms. Power, writes that Lucy is very creative and has a great sense of humor. She loves to tell stories, share experience, and use the bulletin board to post some pretty funny information. She is always ready for a good laugh. We are very fortunate that Lucy has been with us for 20 years. I personally also appreciate her frankness and willingness to question current practice to do what she feels is best for kids. For your care of us when we are sick, and your support of us when we are out of your care, we thank you for 20 years. Whenever I am on duty and have to call her in the middle of the night, she says the same thing. I'm not on duty, call Rose. But if she is on duty, she is unflappable in a crisis and ready to help folks when you need help. She's a trusted ally and caregiver, and we thank her for 2 decades of service. Thank you. We're on to our last few here. This next 2 gentlemen are celebrating 30 years. The last 3 folks, their images are up here when you have a chance to walk by to see what they look like in yesteryear. So for 30 years of service, Mr. D. Charlie DeBonzo is a pillar in the WA community. Currently a science teacher, but he has played many other roles here, including middle school director, varsity basketball coach, and dean of students. For 30 years, he has brought a mix of caring, humor, and resilience that has served as a foundation for many of our students. And for 30 years, he has pushed, cheered, explained, and counseled our graduates. The size of his commitment to our students is only matched by that of his eyebrows. Father to Paul and Andy, husband to Julie, I see Charlie everywhere. His red truck is up the hill early morning planning for class. I see him almost every day in the summer, in Matter, planning labs and listening to sports radio. I see him walking on the street with the largest set of headphones, like he works at an airport or a construction site. And what he is often doing while walking through our streets or through our hallways, he is whistling or singing. He offers a gift of song. Rapping as Run DMC last year, or more famously crooning for student and faculty birthdays. For those of you who weren't around while he was middle school director, he would offer you a choice on your birthday of what version of Happy Birthday you wanted. Traditional version, the Beatles version, or the Marilyn Monroe sexually serenading John F. Kennedy version. He was unafraid to be goofy with the Beatles, and borderline uncomfortable with the Marilyn Monroe one. So, especially for Mannix, Ms. Douglas, and Ms. Ryan, do not pass up this opportunity and choose wisely. Mr. DeBonzo, as a colleague, is a strong advocate for what he believes in. He cares and is passionate and lets people know where he stands, which I appreciate. His name, DeBonzo, comes from the Italian verb avanzare, which means to advance, which is what he has been doing here with our students for 3 decades. After serving as our Dean of Students and Middle School Director, he then chose to return where he wanted to be. Back with you, the students, back in the classroom as a chemistry teacher, doing what he loves. We love that you were here, Charlie, and thank you for 30 years. Another individual celebrating 30 years. He can't be with us today as recent health concerns have sidelined him, but Mr. Todd Jenkins, for 30 years, has been a member of our maintenance department. For 30 years in our maintenance department, he has been doing whatever was needed. Recently sidelined, he'll be back, but he has changed his assignments. He's the gentleman in the mailroom. For those of you students now who know, this is Mr. Jenkins. He is also another closet comic book nerd, able to argue the merits of the Fantastic Four, all while using horrible puns. With 30 years in our building, he is the historical consciousness of the maintenance department. He is the one they all go to with our questions. Why is Mattern Foundation fixed with duct tape and seaweed? You know, how do we repair the main switch on the central AC in Old Academy? And the door to the fifth bathroom seems to be locked again. Todd is a self-described fixer, ready to deal with construction that was done before modern building codes and even before electricity. His versatility is a strength we value here, and so is his endurance. Todd's recent health issues have prevented him from being here today, but when you see him, please thank Todd Jenkins for 30 years. And our last recipient today, celebrating 40 years of service to the Academy. Prior to this, if I can ask members of the Atlas just to be sort of prepared. They're going to sort of head to the doors.
Now?
Sure.
Thank you.
Now.
Thank you, Wally.
So we want to spend a few moments talking about someone who has spent 40 years here at the Academy. So celebrating 40 years, Mr. Gary Cook. Mr. Gary Cook, history teacher, department chair, soccer coach, coach of basketball, baseball, Model UN, and as of yesterday's faculty meeting, a poet. 40 years ago, 1979, a shaggy-haired kid from South Hadley sauntered into the academy to teach history and coach soccer, and I turned 5. Mr. Cook is a decorated and dedicated, rigorous teacher and coach. Husband to Deb, father to Colin, Tim, and Rufus, he's committed to family. As a coach, he has been regarded among the finest New England has ever had to offer. Many of the banners on these walls show the level of excellence he brought to WMA soccer. You see a couple up there, and a couple there. Soccer aside, I know Gary primarily from the classroom. The guy lives and breathes history, and if you get close enough, he kind of smells like it too. I have seen him teach on issues of U.S. government to classic sociological conundrums. He is a voracious reader of history and always wants to learn more. And so, speaking of history, I was able to dig up from our archives some historical records of Mr. Cook. I found personal notes of colleagues and his initial contract from 1979. His initial contract from 40 years ago states, in lieu of payment, Mr. said Gary Cook shall receive 3 sheep, firewood for a long winter, and one of our finest outdoor sheds. Other historical evidence, taken from the pages of Atlas, a series of quotes and notes that over time gives you a sense of how history changes. First quote, this long-haired hippie has been questioning our hiring practice. 1980 head of school. Gary has a gift for teaching students how to write and cry. Unnamed dean from the early 1990s. He seems to know what he's doing as a soccer player, though I am probably a lot better. Don Nicholson, 1983. Great teacher, not crazy about his use of turtlenecks, often smells like wet dog. I've got my eye on him. Former head of school, Rodney LeBrecq. Now, we always have alums who come back. And some of them work here right now. And they come and they always recognize Mr. Cook's talents and how his passionate and rigorous classroom expectations help them learn and achieve. People recognize Gary as a teacher and a coach and as a force that helped them shape who they are as a learner, an athlete, and as a person. What keeps him going? 4 decades teaching, coaching, running, and staying completely slim and in shape. I asked Charlie D., our chemist, to run a test to see what physically and chemically kept the man going. After getting a DNA sample from a recently used dining hall fork, Mr. D ran some tests and found the chemical results to what makes up Mr. Cook's sense of endurance. The results were 13% golden retriever hair, 9% New England style IPAs, 23% raw mustache, and 55% dead, his wife. Mr. Cook, for 40 years you have served and continue to serve this community with honor. We thank you for the service, and we are indebted to your efforts. Mr. Gary Cook.
I have to interrupt us for a minute because we have one more person we need to recognize. We have to recognize the extraordinary 15-year service of the person who recognizes everyone else, Mr. Monson. To help you with this, I've asked some of his classmates, other 15-year service members, to come up here and say a few words, heartfelt words, their feelings for Mr. Monson. You can join me now, thank you.
Jack.
Yes, I appreciate Mr. Swanson's kind words. He's always on time, and he doesn't wear glasses, so that was a cheap shot. I'm not going to talk about, like how I have to comb my hair every morning. I've worked with him very closely for 13 years. But I got 15 years, I counted 2 years right out of college when I got here. It's been pretty much all fun. He is a really bright, really smart person who gets things done. That's his skill, is that he gets things done. He is a doer. And he like throughout the time I've known him, like I am an English teacher, you all know that. And he is dismissive of English. He is like in conversation with me anyway. Maybe that's just with me. But the weird thing is he's teaching English in my classroom now. He alluded to that. And he's really good English teacher. And the stuff he's on the board and what he's got the kids doing is like gold standard. And the thing no one knows about is he actually majored in English at Wilbraham. He just won't tell anyone. And so there's that. The other thing about him, and you all know this, I think most of you do, that we together made a rugby program. And this has been a journey of passion and friendship, and it's been one of the best things that's happened to me in my life, not just here at WMA. And when we went into it, it was like we were going to be co-coaches, right? We were going to be co-head coaches. No one was going to be the head coach. And this bothers everyone around us, like who's the head coach of rugby? And at times when he felt my ego needed to be a little boosted, he would say, all right, you're head coach. Everyone knows you're head coach. And I'm like, no, but he does everything. He does the scheduling, he cooks the hamburgers, he makes sure that there's buns and cheese for the burgers afterwards, he sets up the field, he talks to the other coaches, he represents us to the world. he recruits, he does everything. And so after 13 years, 15 years of service, I've decided to make it clear that he can be head coach from now on. Okay? Right? As long as
So I wanted to come up here and roast Mr. Swanson, but I realized that he's funnier than I am, and that's really difficult. But in the 15 years that we've been here, I have come to refer to Mr. Swanson as my annoying kid brother, which he is. He's the kind of kid brother who will burst into your room and be like, hey, what are you listening to? What are you watching? Oh, that's boring, that's stupid. Snooze fest, right? And he does that to me all the time. But then he'll go and he'll listen to music, or he'll watch the movie that I like. Say, you know what, I gave it a try, it wasn't that bad. But he'll also show up on my doorstep at random times with used records that he thinks I'll like, or a book on horror movies. But most importantly, he's the kind of kid brother who gets me to do the things that I never thought I could do or would do. He'll be like, hey, you want to go to Korea? Let's go to Korea. All right. And he'll be like, hey, you want to teach a class on social media? Yeah, I'll do that. Hey, you want to teach human geography? I don't know. Yeah, do it. It'll be fine. You want to go present at a global conference about rhetoric? He'll love it. And he keeps pushing me. The most important thing, though, is he pushed me to form a band that has had a lot of stops and starts over the years. But we've stuck together and, like brothers, have actually performed twice in front of you. So I think that's a good our kids, like he said, have grown up together, and they are siblings as well, and they do the same things to each other. And I couldn't be more grateful for the friendship, the brotherhood, and the goading that he has provided me over the last 15 years. So he's annoying, yes, but he's always my kid brother.
So Mr. Swanson talked about our trip to India, which is like 9 years ago. Hard to believe. And then we saw the Dalai Lama together, which was an absolutely amazing experience. We were closer than you are to where we are right now in front of the Dalai Lama. But that's not really stuck with me, really, as the highlight of our trip to India. On our very last day in India, we were at a shopping market, a bazaar in Delhi, and Mr. Swanson had somehow run out of socks. It's the last day, so it's understandable. So he went to the market, bought a lovely pair of socks from a gentleman selling just socks and batteries and watches and many other items. And he came back to the room and said, I just got some socks. And we're like, great, you probably need them. And then he opened up the package, pulled out the socks, and instead of one pair of socks in there were 9 pairs of socks. But they were all patchwork together. They were part hosiery, part sports socks, some parts were black, some parts were gray. There was a patchwork of socks right there. He looked at them, we burst out laughing. He didn't complain one single bit. And then he put them on. He put on these socks. And I know the socks are special to him. I've seen him wear them before, and he's probably wearing them right now. And I think that says a lot about Mr. Swanson, that he's ready to take on whatever gets thrown at him. He's done a tremendous job at this school. He's been a friend, a massive supporter for the arts. Despite wanting to cut half the classes every year, he still is talked into allowing us to do them. But overall, I think he's one of the kindest,
most appreciative members of our school, and I'm very glad that we're still here together. Thank you, Mr. Swanson.
What Mr. Swanson probably hates more than anything in the world is attention. So this is wonderful. I just have one final thing to say about him, and that is that 5 years ago, when we first started working together in this capacity, dean of faculty, head of school, he said, I think we're going to work really well together because we are nothing alike. And he was right, but in really important ways. We are alike in some ways, but so in some really crucial ways he was right. And it's, he pushes me in ways that he pushes all of you also. And others have touched on this already, but Mr. Swanson pushes us to action when we could be complacent, or to think differently when we might be confident or overconfident. And that, for all of us, is incredibly valuable. I know that I find it incredibly valuable. So thank you, Mr. Swanson, for 15 years of participation.
So, as we close, we have over 370 years of collective service that we honor today. As we enter our third century as a school, and during this holiday time, remember that we as a learning community are built on people, built on the relationships, conversations, efforts, and commitments, and remember, during this time especially, to thank these people and others who deserve your gratitude. To everyone, I thank you for your respect as an audience, and I wish everyone happy holidays. Go Titans.